What if there was a way for your thoughts, your words, to be sent into the future and to be understood and appreciated by someone anywhere on the planet? Would that not make us, in a way, immortal and give us the power to communicate across time and space? When we were inquisitive children curled up under the blankets, flashlight in hand, reading our favorite story, were we not actually inviting the author of that story into our innermost space to share their thoughts, their stories with us in their words? I'm Bella St. John. Join us as we venture together to explore the history of those words in A Novel Idea.
My dear friend, Mr. Devon Harris, it has been ages since we saw each other, actually at the Winter Olympics in Whistler. How are you?
Oh my God, it's that long, huh? It is awesome to see you, Bella. I'm grateful for technology because now I get to break that long spell of not seeing you. So thank you for inviting me on. And it's a novel idea to invite a Jamaican bobsledder on a program about writing. That's pretty novel.
And so you jumped in. So if somebody doesn't know of you, you just kind of gave it away. You were part of that original, very famous Jamaican bobsled team.
I've been accused of talking too much. I'm still doing that.
It's good because we're going to get onto that. But let's start back at the very, very, very beginning. So very good place to start, as Julie Andrews, I think, once said. So you were born in Kingston Town, Jamaica.
Yeah, I jokingly say Kingston Town, but yeah, the capital of Jamaica, Kingston. Yeah, I'm a big city boy.
I was going to say, so what was it like growing up there? Because anybody who hasn't been to Jamaica will think, okay, so Jamaica is full of lots of little villages, and what was it like growing up in Kingston, Jamaica?
Yeah, and Kingston itself, obviously everything is relative, is a pretty big city. It's the biggest city in Kingston, in Jamaica, and I grew up in a particular part called Olympic Gardens. And I know when you think of Jamaica, this, tropical paradise, and you hear a name like Olympic Gardens, you have to think, wow, that sounds, pretty romantic. But it actually, Bella, was and still is a tough ghetto environment, violent, impoverished. And that was kind of the environment in which I grew up, especially back in the, 70s, 80s. There was a lot of political violence. It has just kind of started creeping up. And so, a little bit scary, I have to admit, but there were fun times as well. My haven was school. And so I really enjoyed spending time in school because I like learning and competing in class and of course, in the sports field. So that was kind of my safe place.
Interesting. Your haven was school. That was where oh, please don't make me go back. Please don't make me go back. Now, tell me, still with your upbringing. Now, you are one of 16.
Correct? Yes. So,
right. So there's a story there. You have to fill us in. And by the way, you fit where? You're in the.
I am number one.
But of course.
I'm number one, baby.
I didn't even need to ask a question.
I'm the first, but my parents split when I was really young, and they ended up having, a bunch of kids. I always, joke to say they were competing. Oh yeah, you have one. Well, watch this, So, but I actually, my early years were with my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, until I was maybe 5 or so. Lived in rural Jamaica on the southern side of the island. And then I moved back to Kingston, to Olympic Gardens, to live with my dad. And so I grew up with him and, kind of his kids. And my mother, I didn't grow up with her, didn't spend time with her, but my siblings and I are all very close nonetheless.
How did your early life influence your writing? Because you've written 2 books that we'll get to in a moment. But how did your early life influence what came out of here and through your pen?
Wow, that's a really good question. I'm not so sure, except, really just my experiences. Interestingly enough, when I was in elementary school, started to write poems. When I were between the fifth and sixth grade, I'd written maybe 20 poems, and I don't know where any of them are now. But I just kind of had that knack. And then I went to high school and just really um, turned away from literature and writing and really delve into sports. And it was until much later in life, as I started speaking actually and traveling, and in my early days of speaking, I would, when I go to a city, I would volunteer to go to a hospital or visit a school on the poor side of town because I'm a kid from the poor side of town, and in talking to the kids and speaking to them, one of the things I realized was just how low their self-confidence was. And perhaps I was like that at that age, but I started to think about a story I could tell them that would probably help to get them to believe in themselves and their goals and so on. And I thought of the Jamaican bobsled team story. So, yeah, so that's, midlife now or later in life. And that's so the question became, man, how do I tell this story? Because I didn't really see myself as a writer per se, but I felt I had a story to tell. And then kind of thinking about that, I came across a book by a Jamaican writer, a girl called Kelly Magnus, and she had written us a book about a little Rastafarian kid in Jamaica called Little Lion. And the book was written to verse. It was catchy. And I'm like, aha. And so that gave me the idea to write my first book, Keep on Pushing. Yes, I Can, the story of the Jamaican bobsled team, written to verse, and just trying to tell kids to believe in themselves, through the story of our experience.
It's interesting. I coach a lot of speakers, well, have done, not so much now. And one of the things that I suggest to them is go to places like senior citizens places and schools, etc., to cut your teeth, because they're not going to be expecting a polished, seasoned professional, and particularly with the senior citizens, they're so welcoming and so warm, and they want to hear your story. So especially if you are an author starting out and you want to go and speak about your book, they're two excellent places to start.
I agree with you. And actually, when the first few drafts of my children's book, my kids were much younger then. So I went to their classrooms and I read my book, and just to kind of get a sense, of course, I told my story and I read my book to get a sense of what these kids felt about the books. And, it went over well, except my son, Brandon. I remember the little bugger was, 6 years old maybe. And so I was going to his class and he says, "Don't embarrass me." And I'm like, in my head, I'm like, what can I do to embarrass him? And so I go, and I read my book and it's well received and all that stuff. And Bella, I went up to the kid right afterwards and he slapped me in the face. Pow! "I told you not to embarrass me."
Oh, no.
Like, what did I do?
I think particularly teenagers, but younger now, that's a phrase that they're just born with. Don't embarrass me. Don't embarrass me, Mom. Don't embarrass me, Dad.
Wow, I told you not to embarrass me.
You have 5 children, correct?
Yes, I do.
Yes. So coming back again, still back to your early years. So you did something that a lot of people don't do, and I'm not talking about the Olympics. I'm talking about you grew up wanting to be a particular thing, and you went and you did it. You wanted to be a soldier. And by the way, drum roll, not only did this man become a soldier, but he graduated from, get ready to swoon, girls, from the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst. Magnificent institution.
Jeez. So it's my grandmother's fault. You have to blame her for that. So when I lived with her, she was just, one of the things I remember about her was that she was this amazing storyteller. And I tell this story all the time. The stories that impacted me the most clearly were the ones she told me about soldiers, and I remember her telling me how soldiers could jump in these deep gullies and not break their legs. And it's just like, oh my God, I don't know if I could do that, but I'd want to do it. It just kind of lit up my little 5-year-old imagination. And so that inspired me to want to be a soldier. But I think more importantly, and I'm thankful for that, it inspired me to want to go pursue goals and results that other people thought were difficult, if not impossible. So, because to me, jumping in at that age, jumping in a gully and not breaking your leg was like, oh my, that's just impossible. But if they're doing it, man, maybe I can do it as well. And as I grew older, I realized that you could actually enlist in the army as an officer. And I didn't know if I could do that, but I'm like, man, I'm going to have to try. And, to add insult to injury, in a way, because I was from the hood, it made it a little bit more, unlikely, because, ghetto boys don't become army officers. But yeah, just another hurdle that I had to overcome.
And you were in the military, correct, when the whole Jamaican Olympic thing started?
Yes, I was.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I was a newly minted 21-year-old second lieutenant, just returned from Sandhurst. And I remember just walking down to the officers' mess and having this really intense conversation with myself. I'm like, so you've achieved your big dream. What are you going to do with the rest of your life, man? And I kind of look back now and laugh. I'm like, I can't believe I was 21 years old having that conversation. But that's when it hit me. Oh yeah, the Olympics, because I did want to become an Olympian as well. That the army thing was birthed when I was really young. At 15, I decided I want to be an Olympian. And so now that I've achieved this goal of being an army officer, well, yeah, the Olympics. This is 1987. The Olympics are coming up the following year in Seoul, Korea. Though I didn't know that a place called Calgary existed. And round about that time, 2 Americans who lived in Jamaica came up with the idea to start a team. Couldn't get guys from the summer team to do it, so they came to the army looking for athletes. And I ran a cross-country race, and I impressed my colonel. And so he thought he'd send me to the team trials, really to make up numbers. There's a philosophy in the army that says officers must always participate. So the colonel thought he'd send his young fit officer to the team trials to say he did send a young officer. But the way I'm wired, I can't just go to the team trials to participate. I had to make the team. And I didn't know how I was going to make the team. All right, so the colonel sent me the team trials really just to make up numbers. But the way I'm wired, Bella, I can't just go to the team trials just to participate. I had to make the team, and I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I had to. So I went and I tried my darnest, man. I really worked hard over those 2 days, and I guess I also smiled brightly, and they liked my smile, and they selected me. So here we are.
And now the movie Cool Runnings that was made. Now that's let's just say loosely based on fact. The one thing though that when I mentioned to people that that you were going to be part of this, that they keep asking was, did they really carry the sled and walk across the finish line? So
I get that question a lot. Yeah, the movie is loosely based on the true story. The crash happened, as you saw, without the bolts. Yes, we went over on our heads. And no sensible person, Bella, will lift a 650-pound bobsled across the finish line.
You did walk across the finish line.
We walked across the finish line.
Yes.
We sensibly pushed the sled across the finish line. Imagine if you lift that thing at 650 pounds and then you slip on the ice. Yeah. That would be unpleasant.
But just the fact that you finished is a wonderful piece of sportsmanship. And I must say as well, when we were in the Winter Olympics in Whistler, and I'm not talking to you now, I'm talking to the audience, you've no idea how much this man is admired.
It's the Jamaican accent. What can I say?
No, it's not. It's the fact that you have mentored and been there for so many and been such a role model. And that leads me to the content of your books.
Before you go there,
Please.
talking about Whistler, I mean, you're absolutely right. I remember being in Whistler and talking to my teammates, or maybe just after Whistler, but talking to my teammates and saying to them, I think I'm only just beginning to understand the impact we have had on the world. Because I did meet, a lot of people over the years, but this one lady in particular from Eastern Europe, barely spoke English, began to tell me how much our story inspired her. And yeah, it was touching, moving.
Yeah. I was actually, there was a situation that we had with, I think, the Swiss team, and one of the fellows from the Swiss team actually mentioned to me, and I'm going to tear up when I say this, he said, he's like a god to us.
Wow. And we were studying them too, so,
So your books, 2 books. First one we've already mentioned, the Yes I Can. The other is on your shirt, sir.
Yeah, it's kind of like, this is my thing, man. Keep on pushing, as it speaks to so many different things. It's obviously it has a bobsled analogy, but so it speaks to this ever-changing dynamic process through which we transform ourselves, and we are transforming the people and the teams around us, and we're finding ways to get past the obstacles in our lives. If we can't get those things out of the way, we have to push ourselves over, around, or through them, whatever it takes. And so my book, it's a semi-autobiographical motivational book, Keep on Pushing, Hot Lessons from Cool Runnings.
So tell me about the process of writing that book.
It took me, I think I probably took a year to write the book, Bella. I started just thinking about the Jamaican bobsled experience, and of course, as loosely based as Cool Runnings was to the true story, there were many life lessons in there that reflected our path and journey to the Olympic Games. So I started thinking about what those lessons would be, and the experiences that I had or shared with my teammates that kind of pointed to those lessons, as well as, experiences prior to the Olympics, growing up in Olympic Gardens, or being in the Army, or being at Sandhurst. And so I just started really just writing down my thoughts. And I tell people, who want to write a book all the time, like, hey, stop worrying about what the end product is going to look like. Just write. Just start, don't edit it, just start from A and start just, let your thoughts flow as freely as they can. And that's kind of what I did initially. And as I'm doing that, and I, of course, I'm using a computer to do it, but I'm a paper guy as well. So as I'm thinking about that, I have a stack of papers, and I'm kind of just thinking about what the topics of the various chapters could be, the titles of various chapters, and writing those, just kind of penning it out and looking at it, and then figuring out which lessons and which stories would fit which lesson for each chapter. And it just started to take form. And, you play with the sequence of the chapters and that kind of stuff. And after about a year, you have something that resembles a book.
And so you decided on self-publishing. So tell us about that part of the journey.
So I actually self-published my first book as well. I remember before, maybe while I was in the process of writing my children's book, I was at an event with all these authors who I want to say they had written stories in one of the Chicken Soup for the Soul series. I think that's what it was. And just talking to them, and there was a grind, and I don't mind grinding. I don't mind working, right? But there's a grind that they had to put into getting their book out, although they were published through a traditional publisher. That and it didn't seem to me that they were getting the kind of support that I would have expected. So I'm like, well, if I'm going to put all of this work in to write the book, and then I have to put all of this work in to promote the book and get it out there, might as well I just go all in, as opposed to, give this dude, as in a publisher, the rights to my book, and then they do nothing but sit back and wait for me to work. So yeah, I just started learning about how you self-publish. I went to the library, really good resource. You should try it. There's almost every neighborhood has one, and guess what? The books are free. Novel idea. So I just go borrow books and read and took notes, and I went online and read, and they say do this, and I'm like, okay, and I just kind of formulated the plan step by step. Obviously, the writing process is separate, and then you're figuring out the other piece in terms of getting the ISBN number and all that stuff, right? And for the children's book, needless to say, of course, I had to get an illustrator as well. But yeah, I just kind of read and took notes and went through the process, and voila, I have a book.
So, final questions, short, crisp answers.
Mm-hmm.
What is the most important lesson you have learned thus far on your author journey?
The most important lesson I've learned is not to be too self-critical, not to edit yourself, just allow your thoughts to flow.
Super. If you had to describe yourself in just 3 words, what would they be?
Determined, determined, determined.
I love that. Yes. If you could invite any 5 authors, living or dead, over for dinner, who would they be and why?
The first one is going to be probably strange, is Geoffrey Chaucer. I did this book in high school, and we had to translate everything, but I have an affinity to that really old English, man. It just, I don't know, it's just really flowery language, and it just sounds like music. And I'd love to just have a chat with him, not so much about his writing, but just because of the language that he used. So Geoffrey Chaucer would be the one of the people. I guess I'm going to say William Shakespeare, because I tend to quote the dude every now and again as well, and I love his work. Then it is the Jamaican philosopher Bob Marley, and I know he's not seen as a writer per se, but yeah, he's deep.
Yeah.
He's deep. And I'm going to go back to Jamaica again with Louise Bennett Coverley. This is a kind of a poet, linguist, a woman who just added a lot of pride in the Jamaican patois dialect, what some people call the Jamaican dialect, and allowed us to be proud of it. And she definitely had a way with words as well. And then outside of that, I have so many. I mainly read motivational books, and it probably would be Norman Vincent Peale. Because I got into motivational books, interestingly enough, when I started bobsledding, and his book, Think and Grow Rich, was one of the first ones I read. And I know his story of just grinding man until he got where he got. So I'd be curious to talk to him. Again, it's not so much about their writing, but their life experiences.
It's interesting when you said that you quote Shakespeare a lot. So does everybody. The number of phrases.
I'm not alone. Darn it.
But you quote the real quotes. Well, Shakespeare had a vocabulary, a published vocabulary in his works of about 21,000 words. But the number of phrases that we use in general speech these days that came from Shakespeare is huge. And I will put it up on the screen for people so that you can go hunt. Last two questions. What is the best piece of advice that you can give to somebody starting out on their author journey?
I was about to say have fun. It's persevere, because it can be challenging. It's especially if it's something that you're just starting out, it can be frustrating, just trying to clarify your thoughts. People talk about writer's block. I can't honestly say that I suffered writer's block, but it can seem like a daunting process, writing a book. Just persevere, take it one day at a time, one step at a time, write a few sentences or paragraphs here and there. Just be consistent with your effort.
And last question. As far as being an author, which you are, even if you self-identify more as a former athlete and a motivational speaker, as an author, what do you hope your legacy will be?
That I am having a conversation with my readers that in the end inspire them to be their best self. I mean, that just kind of ties in part and parcel with my overall mission to inspire people.
Mr. Devon Harris, thank you so much for being a part of this. I'm just so honored, and it's been forever. It was even just wonderful from a personal perspective to get to chat with you today. So thank you. And on behalf of everybody who's watching this and listening to this as a podcast, go and check out Devon's books. They really are full of the most wonderful stories and the most inspirational comments and quotes that you'll come across. So again, thank you, my dear friend.
Bella, it is wonderful to catch up with you. Thank you for having me. And let's not wait all this time again to connect.